what's the next biggest shoe you're looking to see drop?
There are still some pretty high-profile guys out there in the market. Trey Hendrickson, the Bengals defensive end, Colts, Cowboys, maybe. Romeo Doubs, I think, was a lot of people, across the league had ticketed for the Niners. Obviously, with Mike Evans now going there, that's probably not happening. But, Doubs was expected to have a strong market coming into all of this. Tariq Woolen, a starting corner for the Super Bowl champion Seahawks would be another name. So there are still some good names out there. And then I think, you start to cast your eyes towards what could happen on the trade market as well. The A.J. Brown thing is sort of at a standstill, and the Eagles don't seem like they're in any particular rush to push anything across the goal line that they don't see commensurate with his value as a player.
All right, let's dive into A.J. Brown. Why would he even be on the market, Albert?
It's a good question. So I think part of it is kind of where they are as a team right now. And, some of the bills of the last few years have come due. And so, how they constructed contracts. And this is a credit to Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni and especially Jeffrey Lurie in spending cash over a cap and being so aggressive the last few years. They were priced out on Jalen Phillips, who they really wanted to keep. They dipped their toe in with Max Crosby, weren't all that aggressive. So there's that part of it, right? Like that eventually they're going to need to flip the roster a little bit. There's also just kind of the general sense of back and forth and everything that's happened the last couple of years. And even when things have been really good, are they great personally for A.J. Brown there? That's always been a question. He's wildly popular in the locker room. So this isn't a bad guy, but, obviously there's been some friction there with him. And so they've at least entertained the idea of him going elsewhere. And, I can tell you that his camp has done its homework and has kind of figured out what's out there, which, I think that piece of it's an important one too here, just because when you're looking at, different options and what's out there, I think that question of whether the grass is really greener, kind of colors how hard you want to push, like how badly do I want out? Well, that could be a function of what sort of opportunities are out there for me as well.
Okay. So what opportunities do you think could be out there for A.J. Brown over the next 24 hours? Because I'd imagine the deadline for something like this would be the draft if it doesn't pop before everybody's got to get their caps locked by 4:00 Eastern on Wednesday.
Yeah, you would assume that like the deadline would be the draft, and part of that, of course, is because if the Eagles are going to use picks that they get for A.J. Brown, then that has to be by April, right? Like if those guys are going to be on their roster now, that has to be by April. So I think this becomes over the next 24 to 48 hours. Sort of, you come to us, and if you come to us with something suitable, then we'll listen. But I don't think the interest in A.J. Brown out there has been I don't think there's like this hot market out there for him right now. And part of that is his age, part of that's the injury history, part of that's the contract. And like you said, we get to the end of the week and now all of a sudden cash and cap budgets have been spent. And so that pool of teams is going to naturally get smaller. But as I see it right now, Rich, I don't know that there's more than one team really involved, which I think explains why it's sort of at a standstill.
Do you want to name the team, Albert?
Yeah, I think it's New England. I would just, from my understanding was, and just talking to some people on this whole thing, that, if you go back a couple of weeks and, again, A.J. Brown's camp doing their research on what teams might be interested. I know that there were 4 teams at least involved, and just as far as who A.J. was interested in. And my understanding is those teams were the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Bills, and the Patriots. And the Bills obviously bowed out of that when they went and traded for DJ Moore. The Chiefs were allocating their resources elsewhere, so they weren't really in it. And same goes for the Chargers. The Chargers didn't have a great interest in doing anything. They were more focused on, okay, how are we going to manage our edge situation with Khalil Mack and Odafe Owe? Obviously, they keep Mack and they lose Owe. And then what are we going to do in our offensive line with Bradley Bozeman retiring? They get rid of Mekhi Becton. They bring in Tyler Biadasz from the Commanders. So that really has left the Patriots, and it does feel like a little bit of a staring contest right now. Mike Vrabel is a factor in this, of course, because AJ Brown's got great affinity for the guy who brought him into the league and coached him his first 3 years as a pro there in Tennessee, and I think there's differing opinions on his value. You could use a couple comps as far as what the Eagles are looking for. One's the Devontae Adams trade of a few years ago when he went from the Packers to the Raiders. That was 2 first-round picks. Another's the Quinnen Williams deal, which, Quinnen, again, is, same draft class as A.J. Brown. And that was a 2 this year and a 1 next year. Both packages had a first-rounder and a second-rounder in them. And that's been sort of the basic ask here for the Eagles. On the other side, I think other teams look at it and see an older player who, has had a little bit of a downturn in his production the last couple of years. And the comps I heard from other teams, not the Patriots, but the comps I heard from some other teams was the Stephon Diggs trade, not from Minnesota to Buffalo, but from Buffalo to Houston, which was a second-round pick and a pick swap. And so you look at those two sets of comps, and there's a pretty big gap there. And I think that's where the staring contest comes into play.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.